Welcome to Scale Model Basics. I'm Aaron Skinner. Masking canopies can be one of the more challenging parts of building aircraft models, but it's really not that difficult and you can do it. Here are 3 of my favorite techniques, starting with masking tape. In addition to the canopy you're planning on masking, you're going to want a sharp knife. This is a new number 11 blade, and it's helpful to keep a bunch of extra blades on hand. You're going to want to change those out as soon as that one becomes even a hint of dull, because you want it to cut cleanly for the sharpest masking lines you can get. Grab something to support the canopy. In this case, I'm using poster putty. You can also use things like Play-Doh or silly putty, something that gives it a little bit of structure and can be formed inside it. That helps to prevent it fracturing or stressing while you're handling it to put the masks on. You'll need tape, obviously, and then something to burnish the tape down, and some tweezers can be useful. So you just want to push this under it. Make sure you get it under all of the parts of it. This also helps to mask the inside, so you can leave it there for painting if you want. Good to go. So I'm going to cut some tape. I'm going to use a handy dandy tape cutting template. And I'm going to cut triangles. Now, you may ask, why am I cutting triangles when the canopy has square frames? But what I like to do is take triangle, and then you can take that point and put it into a corner of the frame. So you just want to carefully align it. Put the straight edge along one of the edges, and that is easier than trying to get it cut perfectly for a corner or to try and cut exactly along the lines. Particularly on a canopy like this one, this does not have very highly raised frames. They're fairly flush to the surface, just engraved slightly. So it's easier to try to do this way than to try and cut the frame lines on the canopy. So you can see how those 2 pieces of tape come together to form a right angle corner. And you just keep building it up from there. So each frame will actually be masked by several pieces of tape, not a single one. I'm using the toothpick not only to burnish it down, but also to just push it around a little bit, since I need it to be a little bit more aligned with the bottom frame. You want to make it as perfect as possible first time out. There's not a lot of redos when it comes to masking and painting. Once you've painted the canopy, if there's a mistake, it's hard to correct. One of the last things you want to do is make sure that you don't notice any gaps, and then you can cover them with a little bit more tape. That's one pane masked. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more to go. And this section of this P40 canopy will be ready to paint. Let's move on to bare metal foil. Again, you'll need a sharp knife, plenty of extra blades, because foil will dull those blades even quicker than tape will. Tweezers are useful. You'll need something to burnish the foil down with. This is particularly important here. I'm going to use a pointed skewer and the foil. I'm using chrome. You can use any color you want to. Most of them will work exactly the same. So first of all, cut a section of foil and then lay it down over the canopy. You want it to go past the edges, and then you take your stick and you burnish it down so that you can see where the edges are, particularly the inside edges of the frame. And then you take your blade, and you do not have to push hard to do this. You just want to run the blade along that edge so that it separates the foil. And you want to go carefully and slowly, because it's easy to slip and scar the clear plastic. And you can take your tweezers and you peel it up, and then you can just go back around it with the toothpick to make sure that it is sealed along those edges. Just burnish it down. Again, you don't want to press too hard because you don't want to tear the foil. This stuff is thin and delicate. And then take another piece of foil and Do the same thing again. Lay it down across the edges. Overlap it with the other piece. Burnish it down. And then you can come back and slice it carefully along that edge. And then start peeling up a section. Now that I've got the entire thing masked off and cut, I'm just going to make sure it's burnished along all the edges. And that is ready for paint. Finally, pre-made masks. These come from a lot of different companies. Edouard's one of my personal favorites because I like the paper that they're made of. It's very similar to Tamiya tape and they're very flexible. But there are a lot of other companies that do them also. I have not used all of them, so I can't speak to that. What is really great about these, they're a huge time saver, particularly for complex masks. If you have a bomber with multi-pane glass and turrets and all of those kind of things, these things are worth their weight in gold. If I ever buy no other aftermarket in my life, I will buy pre-made masks. So how do we use them? You'll need the masks, your canopy, sharp knife, tweezers, and again, your burnishing stick if necessary. As you can see, those masks are hard to see on this piece of paper. That's where these instructions are particularly useful because they'll tell you exactly which frame goes in which place. So I'm looking for one of the masks that goes on this, and I think I need V3. I need this one. So I find that on here. There it is. And I carefully put the tip of the knife under a corner of it and just peel it up. Then I can take my tweezers, peel it the rest of the way up. And then, much like the tape, it's just a matter of aligning it with the molded frame lines. And once you're satisfied with where it is, just take your stick and make sure it is burnished down against the plastic so you get a good tight seal against the paint. Again, because this is quick, you can move on to the next one. And so on and so forth until you're done. These little pieces between the masks on the paper are really good for patching up little holes where you might have caught the thing with the knife or the toothpick. Just cut them and place them over it. Cleaning up edges that are misaligned. All right, now we're ready for paint. Those are my 3 favorite ways to mask canopies. Now, which one do I use the most? Well, it depends on the subject I'm working with. If it's a complicated frame with lots of windows, then if there's a ready-made version of that, I will usually go with that because it just finds it easier. As you can tell, I masked all of that canopy, all the rest of the canopy together in about the same time it took me to mask the one frame with tape. If there isn't one available, then I will turn to tape or foil. Tape for large flat canopies with very few complex curves. For complicated curves like blow-on canopies, I find the foil works much better to conform to the shape. Now, when it comes to removing those masks, the first thing you'll probably want to do, which I do, is I'll run around the edge of the mask with the tip of a sharp knife, put a fresh blade in, and just run it around the edge. That helps to break the edge of the paint and allows that mask to peel away much more cleanly without the risk of peeling paint. If there is any residue left from the foil or the tape, take a little Goo Gone on a cotton swab, lightly touch the affected area, try to avoid the paint because it can remove the paint, then wipe it off with a clean cotton swab and maybe a little bit of water, and you're good to go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.